So Joey Drew Studios had just released a new trailer for Bendy and the Dark Revival, and this trailer also reveals the release date and a couple great details about the game itself. So in this analysis, I'm going to look through the trailer, look for any Easter eggs or connections to previous games, and tell you about them. So let's not waste any more time and let's get into it. So in the first quarter of the trailer, it's obvious that instead of being in the time loop of the studio itself, we are in real life at the beginning instead of at the end. Which is interesting since most of the time we've only seen the inside of the studio loop instead of anything outside, at least in terms of the games. So it'll be fairly interesting to see what else is in the real world compared to the studio world. In this first shot, we can notice a Boris statue in this casing over here, and it seems to be a golden one, which is very interesting to note. Don't know if this was given to Joey Drew Studios employees for doing specific types of work or anything, but whatever it is, it's going to be interesting to look at in game. Also in this shot, we can see a character sheet of Alice, Bendy, and Boris right beside the frame Audrey is drawing. Most likely they use as a reference, as the Bendy on the other side also could help with referencing his shape. One interesting thing about the frame Audrey is drawing is that she colors in Bendy's bow tie as red, which while a small detail, it's fairly interesting to point out since Bendy has been mostly black and white his entire existence, so it's fairly interesting to see a little bit of color splash onto him. Now, going back to the idea of this being in real life, is this the actual studio itself, what it originally looked like before the time loop Joey Drew started? If it is, then it's very interesting to see the studio in this light, instead of the usual sepia tone walls. In the back of this hallway shot, we also see a painting of a higher up. I don't know if it's actually Joey Drew, or if it's someone else. Taking in the dialogue of the first couple shots, we have this.
Another late night, another crazy deadline. You can do this, Audrey. What was that?
So these two voice lines hints at what we're going to be doing at the beginning of the game. The intro of the game will obviously be Audrey trying to finish up a frame for animation, but getting interrupted by something in the background. And she looks into it, only to come face to face with the character that we're about to see next. Audrey. Now this is highly likely to be the voice we hear a lot in Boris and the Dark Revival, both within the secret and also the tape that was revealed before the previous Dark Revival trailer.
How very interesting. Such knowledge.
Since it's been a while since I've seen any Bendy stuff, I don't really know his name, but judging by later shots of the trailer, I think his name is Wilson, but I could be wrong on that, and feel free to correct me in the comments. In the background of this shot, we can also see two posters that say, Archgate Pictures presents Joey Drew, the Man, and the Demon. Which kinda interesting hints at the whole thing of Joey Drew being Ink Bendy, that whole theory that was true at one point in the development of Bendy Ink Machine, and was seemingly changed last second, leaving it more ambiguous. We then have a transition to the Joey Drew Studios ink loop itself, where we have Audrey waking up in the newly sepia-toned studio, including an alternate shot from an earlier shot from trailers, which seems to be better animated, along with Audrey having a seemingly better model? I would need to compare in order to see if so. After these two first shots, we get an interesting shot of a quote-unquote demon follower, who I assume is the last one who used to praise Bendy that's now been killed for good. It's a possibility this is Sammy, but with the lack of overalls, I am doubtful if so. It could also be possible that a pipe also hit his head, since the shape on top of it seems to be pipe-like and his head is gone. Though obviously we have the gent pipe wrench smacking through his torso as well, so it could possibly just be a reference to that. We then get a shot of Heavenly Toys from the first game, and its updated glory, and quite a lot has changed here. There's a new gift shop, there's new posters and banners hanging on the rafters, the plushies are of a higher quality, and I can't tell if that's a save station up there or not. It's hard to tell with this dark lighting, but I'll look into it more in editing. We then get a shot of a bar named Lil Devil's Lounge, which is fairly interesting to see as it could relate to what appears in the next shot. But going into this shot more, there's a lot of bottles on tables, there's bar tables and bar stools. The wall decor on the back reminds me a lot of roadside bars. And of course you have this main poster that says Fizz House Soda Pop. There's also a little miracle station right here, which I don't know if we can use or not. It's highly likely we will, but we'll see in 2 weeks. This is where I think the Lil Devil Lounge is going to be located, the Artist's Rest, which I assume in the studio is a place where the artist could obviously rest, which they go to after working all day on a lot of animation frames. But I can assume something off is happening in the back of this place that we'll find out through audio logs and everything. The next shot seems to have just a simple location we're going to explore, which has a fan at the back. There's nothing much to see in the shot, at least at first glance, but honestly I can't really tell. And the next shot is the reason why I think the guy's name is Wilson. As D2's posters say, "Relax, Wilson knows your purpose." And right beside him it says, very interestingly, "The man who killed the ink demon." Now I don't know if this is metaphorical or literal, since this is still in the ink time loop. Did he actually kill Ink Bendy? Or is that just a saying he's put and he's captured Ink Bendy? Or maybe it's even more metaphorical and is referring to Wilson being the reason why Bendy failed, why the franchise and universe fell apart. It could be interpreted that way, though right now it's just simple speculation until the game comes out. Now talking about the audio but interspersed between all these shots.
Attention, children of the machine. For 211 days, you've lived without the ink demon haunting your steps. I banished him away. In return, I ask just a little favor. There is a stranger. Bring her to me.
So we hear Wilson directly talking to the Gent employees, which is fairly interesting as this could either mean the Lost Ones, or specifically Boris's, as it's heavily implied all Gent company members were either turned to Lost Ones or Boris's. And what makes me think this is Wilson? Well, he describes as the one who banished the Ink Demon, which again is interesting as we'll see in a little bit. Wilson then talks about a stranger in the halls and to bring her to him. This is obviously talking about Audrey, and is the main reason the enemies will be attacking us in this game. Though what's interesting is that if he is directly talking to Gent employees to find Audrey, it's interesting that in the next shot we get a shot of a Butch Gang member, Piper. Maybe some Gent employees turn into part of the Butch Gang as well, if the sequence of shots is to be believed. But then again, that's more speculative than any other thing I've said so far. We then get a large compilation of shots here showing a lot of different points of gameplay. As stated before, we get a shot of Piper coming down, which seems to be an introduction cutscene for him. We then get the shot of Audrey running through what seems to be an artist area, with a Boris cutout, which is interesting since we've never seen a Boris cutout until now. There's an odd symbol sketched on the paper here as well, but I don't know what this could mean, if anything at all. There's a very little interesting detail I found here with this poster in the background. This poster is specifically the Sent From Above poster that first featured Alice Angel, but now it has a scratch mark running through it. Now, who did this may be a big question to you. Well, later in the trailer we get an answer of who possibly could have done this. As well as there's a Little Devil Darling poster on the other side of the room that has not been scratched, which should help hints to who did this. We then get another shot which I assume to be another intro animation for the next enemy, who is possibly the enemy that was teased in the first couple trailers, though it looks slightly different, which I would like to nickname this character Bulky Searcher, so it could be a different type of Bulky Searcher. We get this shot of Audrey climbing up some loose bricks on the wall, climbing up to what seems to be another part of the office of the studio, so this could still be at the beginning of the game. We then get a shot directly from the Little Miracle Station in Heavenly Toys, the one that's used fairly often because of Ink Bendy in Chapter 3. And we see Piper trying to get into this Miracle Station while Audrey's hiding, though seemingly can't get in. This is different than how they function in the original game, as when you enter the Little Miracle Station, they just left you. So it's possible they've added mechanics that could have the Pipers and other members of the Butch Gang attempt to open the door, though again, that's just speculation. We then get a shot of what seems to be a cupboard with blueprints for a gear, it seems like, which is obviously an important item since it's glowing. And alongside of that, we can see an empty bacon soup can, which I don't know if you can use as a weapon like you could in the first game. But if you could possibly upgrade your main tool with it. I don't know how you would, but it could be a possibility. We also have a straight pipe, a bottle, some books, and an ink vial from the first game. We then get a shot of Audrey trying to pull open a door, possibly trying to run away from something. Which this seems to be a shot that's about to lead into another shot in the trailer, which we'll talk about in a minute. We then see Audrey put her specialized Gent pipe into what seems to be an upgrade station. And the reason why I call it an upgrade station is because the pipe is notably missing the antenna it had in the first trailer. So it's highly possible that the first trailer was showing a later point in the game. The point where she got the auxiliary powers in the game, which could come later after a lot of previous gameplay. We then get introduced to this character, who I don't believe has a name at this point. I guess I'll just call him Specialist 1 for the time being. Though he speaks in the trailer, saying,
"Thank you very much for your help."
Which could hint that this could be just a side quest character, or a side character that could help us along the way through the entire game. And since he's one of the main 3 on the Joju store page, I can assume he's gonna be a major character throughout the game. We then get a shot of Audrey holding a baseball that says Bud Lewis on it. And out of focus in the shot is a tape recorder, which I assume could have a voice line from Bud Lewis to explain this scene. Maybe she grabs the ball and looks at it as Bud speaks about his day, or of a specific event that happened to Bud. Then we have another very interesting character reveal after that shot. Now this character I can tell is completely new as I haven't seen anything about this character. In the trailer she says,
Almost everyone here either can't speak or they're completely mad.
just by her saying that implies that she is much different than the others, which we could obviously tell that as well. In fact, one thing she reminds me of is of a character from Showdown Bandit. Now sadly I can't remember her name, but I'll show on screen the character. Now it's possible this character here in Bendy a Dark Revival could be a re-implementation of the character from Showdown Bandit into the Bendy franchise. As we know, Showdown Bandit was a failure. Though right now that's only speculation. It's even possible this could be another Alice Angel, though I find that highly unlikely, as it could be just a character similar to Audrey who is just a woman who has been trapped in the ink loop, that somehow hasn't lost her mind in the loop itself. As we can see in the next shot, it doesn't seem like everyone got out of the loop completely sane. Besides the presumably female lost one going insane, there's nothing else to know about this shot. We then see a shot of Audrey seemingly interacting with what seems to be indicators telling which part of the section of the studio she's in is operational or not, with her testing a light of Atrium Supply to turn it on, since presumably she's already done the thing for Atrium Supply to turn it back on, and is simply just testing the light. Nothing else much to note. We then get an interesting shot of what looks to be Specialist 1 looking around for Audrey, who is currently hiding behind the bar in Lil Devil Lounge. Now this could be their first meeting, as in the shot Specialist 1 says, "No one wants you," which however panic state he's currently in, this could be from somewhere else in the game, or could be their first meeting, or it could be him yelling at someone else, that someone else being questionable at this moment. We then finally get to see Allison again, who confronts Audrey to try and help her, saying,
I'm not gonna hurt you. Looked like you needed some help.
Don't touch me.
What's obvious about this scene is that it's after the original trailer and the first use of Audrey's absorption powers through her hand, as she's afraid of Allison to touch it. Most likely because encountering a friendly face is hard to come by in this area, and she doesn't want to accidentally attack her. What's interesting about this shot as well is that this background seems to be heavily toys, as we can see the Bendy plush and the stairway up, as well as the main fountain area. So the Chapter 3 area could be where we re-encounter Allison, which is very interesting. We then get a couple shots here of another area that seems to be another office space, though I can't really tell since the sign is to the left too much, so I can't read the text. Though we do have an interesting sign that shows 3 Z's, so it could be possible that it could lead to the artist's rest right there. And then the next shot, we get to see the silhouette of the new Ink Bendy design, which looks crazy. As well, interestingly, what seems to be a lot of pipes thrown into the Lil Devil Darling poster, as well as a Bendy cutout. In the IO, Allison says this,
Above everything else, stay away from the ink demon.
What's an ink demon?
He likes to smile, and he kills anything that moves.
What's interesting here is that Audrey doesn't immediately connect Ink Demon to Bendy, even though he's literally a little devil. That could be just because he doesn't put enough thought into the idea of the phrase Ink Demon, but it's still interesting nonetheless. And it also implies by the time we get to the Chapter 3 area, Audrey hasn't encountered Ink Bendy, which is most likely because there's sections that Wilson owns that are Ink Demon free. But the locations from the first game are more likely to be abandoned, and a place where Ink Bendy is easily able to roam. Though then again, this is heavy speculation. We then get a shot directly of Audrey's model, as well as a place behind her that says unsafe area, please have your verification, and a Gent logo right beside it. Which is very interesting, as it could be implying that this could be the area where you're able to enter the previous areas of the first game. Though again, heavy speculation here, instead of concrete evidence. We will find out very soon though. we then get a very interesting shot of what seems to be the outside world, except it's not, because we can clearly see that obviously there's no sky. So this could be another Lost One city, though much bigger than the one we see in Chapter 5. We can see what seems to be a bowling alley, a grocery store, a pharmacy, and more, as well as a car. 2 cars in fact, possibly. And of course a walkway above for any people walking through. It's fairly interesting to see this type of infrastructure down here. While it isn't completely out of the blue, it's still fairly interesting. We then get a shot speedily running through one of the vents that you are able to travel through, which is much more decorated than it was in Chapter 4 of Bendy. And then one of the most interesting shots that could explain some of the prior shots. We get to see Audrey closing the door on a clawed hand that looks very familiar. I think it's obvious that this is part of Ink Bendy's new design, and could explain the Alice Angel posters being clawed, as he now has full claws instead of a regular gloved hand, making it seem like the Bendy we'll encounter in Dark Revival will be a mixture of Beast and regular Ink Bendy. Though how he got this mutated we may not know until the game's released, though I have a feeling it has something to do with Wilson. We then get a shot of a room that was teased a while ago, that has all 3 Butcher Gang members all in the same place, which again could be the reveal of the other 2, as showing Piper with Stryker and Fisher right there. Again, there's a lot more cutscenes, though I don't know if it's just for the trailer or if it's going to be actually in-game. We then get a shot of Audrey battling a group of Lost Ones. And what's interesting is that there's a trio of cutouts of all 3 main characters, Bendy, Boris, and Alice, as well as what seems to be the same type of rooms we see Twisted Alice in the first game, when she's first introduced. So this could be an area connected to that. Then the next shot is fairly interesting for speculatives, as we see a Lost One against the table with the words, "She was the 4th" written on the wall. Now, I don't know what exactly this could mean, though it could be heavily theorizable who the 4th is, like the 4th to be entered into this ink loop, the 4th to exist, the 4th to go insane. There's a lot of speculation you could have here, but it has to be describing this Lost One, as it wouldn't make sense if it was describing Audrey, since Audrey would logically walk up to this. We get a simple shot of Audrey climbing up a ladder, which not really much to note. We then get a shot of 3 searcher hands coming out of a large hole. Now this could be a boss fight of a heavily mutated searcher that has the combined souls of a lot of workers. This could even possibly be one of the holes connected to the ink machine, though that again is speculative. There's some vegetation here or there, but nothing else could be described of this shot. We then get a shot of Audrey hiding in a locker to hide from a Fisher, it seems like. As she's closing the locker, we see what seems to be the words cafe area with a graffitied word saying dead. Then the next shot is possibly the most interesting shot of the entire trailer. We get a shot of Twisted Alice from Chapter 3 and 4 wielding the Tommy gun from Chapter 3, slinging another boss encounter. And may I just say the model is heavily improved from before. Looks more realistic, but the bigger eyes of the older model kinda helped with the cartoony feel, but overall I think it looks good. Now what she could be doing shooting at Audrey is that possibly she thinks she's another Alice, and could be wanting her in cart, as it could make her even more beautiful. Though it depends if this loop is going off of the previous philosophy of Twisted Alice. Plus it also could be that since we saw in the previous trailer that we can collect hearts, that we had a surplus of hearts on us and Alice wants to take them by killing us first. Though again, we'll have to see. We then see another instance of Audrey absorbing a character. It's initially hard to tell who the character is, but it's obvious it's a searcher. Then in the next shot we see her attempting to turn off a system, though it seems to go awry and electrocute her in a way. And then the shot before the title reveal is her running up to what seems to be a random Lost One walking around in the main area to attack him. And as she's doing so, the screen warps around her, make it seems like she has a boost mechanic she gains at one point, which is fairly interesting to learn about. Which means that your physical abilities can be upgraded along with your tool. And it implies Audrey has way more power than she seems. Now as for this area itself, I can't really tell much of what it could be. It seems to be another place within the city area, though I could be wrong on that. The building right next to the Lost One is called either Blanket Hotel or Blanket Hotline. Either implies very sad context to the Lost Ones besides the already sad context we have. We then finally get the title card, and finally the last reveal of the trailer is Audrey discovering Bendy. A good Bendy, at least presumably good. Now this would be a bigger reveal if we didn't get spoiled on us by merch, and also the Jojo Studios website image. Though it's still cool to see him animated like this. He looks great, though nothing much else to note of the shot. And then finally we get the announcement of it coming in November 15th, 2022, which is literally 2 weeks away, though Xbox and PlayStation will come at a later date. So overall, this trailer was jam-packed with lots of information, and so much so that we can get a basic story description at the moment. So Audrey seems to just be an animator for Jojo Studios, who is eventually caught by Wilson and brought into the ink loop simply for her being an animator. Once she gets into the ink loop, she is very confused and tries to hide from everything, until she gets a tool or meets the specialist one. After that point, she can finally fend for herself. She explores around the areas controlled by Wilson, who has self-proclaimed himself as the one who killed the Ink Demon, and is taking control of the area. Though due to Audrey now wandering around the place, he has ordered all Gent employees to attempt to capture her and bring her to him. So I have a feeling the main goal of the first part of the game is to escape Wilson's area and get into the older areas of the Bendy chapters. Though obviously, once getting there, we meet Allison Angel, who will tell us to beware the Ink Demon, and that's when we will first encounter him. At this point, Allison has already discovered she has the power to absorb ink creatures, and thus is wary about using that power willy-nilly. But eventually, she will start to use that power a lot more throughout the original chapters of Bendy, only to probably go back to Wilson's area and attempt to quote-unquote free all the lost ones there, only to become more and more powerful and try to use more and more power, possibly to try and face off against the Ink Demon himself, though that will likely end badly. In fact, it's likely that she could have accidentally let the Ink Demon in, causing Ink Bendy to kill some of the lost ones as well, and maybe even eventually Wilson to put some dramatic irony on it, for Wilson calling himself the man who killed the Ink Demon, only to be killed by the Ink Demon. From that point on, I think Ink Bendy will be the main antagonist of the game into the final chapter, where possibly a better final boss fight against Ink Bendy than the original game will happen. Though then again, this is all speculation, and we'll have to see what happens in the game releasing on November 15th, 2022. That's all for my analysis, guys. Thank you for watching, subscribe if you want to, and if you want to watch more of my content, and if you are a FNAF fan, check out this video I made a while ago about Princess Quest.